everybody. Welcome to Gaslit Nation. My name is Olya Yarychkivska. I'm a journalist and filmmaker and the writer and producer of the journalistic thriller Mr. Jones about Stalin's genocide famine in Ukraine. As Secretary of State Anthony Blinken visits Ukraine this week, showing American support for its longtime ally, as Putin continues to ramp up aggression against Ukraine, including 80,000 troops on the border. They are still there, in what looks to be a possible escalation of Russia's ongoing invasion. I wanted to highlight a hopeful story from Ukraine. So I'm interviewing an old friend, the Ukrainian Civic leader, Olya Yarychkivska, a co-founder of Razom, a nonprofit organization with an impressive international network of volunteers who develop civic engagement and anti-corruption efforts for Ukraine. Olya is also a PhD in genetics and a postdoctoral fellow at Rockefeller University. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Andrea. Thank you so much for having me today.
Oh, I'm thrilled. There's lots to talk about. First off, what do you make of Ukraine being so prominent in the news these days, especially for Americans?
Well, it's obvious that a lot of things are happening around Ukraine as Putin is trying to escalate the situation again, bringing the troops to the border. I am very happy to see that Blinken is in Ukraine right now. It's a strong show of support. We really hope for continual support from the U.S. Because parts of Ukraine have been taken away already in this weird hybrid war that nobody can understand how to deal with. And we just really hope that, U.S. and other countries, other world leaders won't allow further dismantling of our country.
What do you hope Blinken will accomplish during his visit to Kiev?
Well, I really hope that this will be a strong message to Putin to de-escalate and essentially to show that the U.S. is back in Ukraine and that if he tries to go any further, there will be consequences.
And what do you make of Putin's recent escalations?
I think he always tries to distract from the internal problems that are taking place in Russia. This is a big distraction for Russian people themselves. So I'm not quite sure what to tie it to, but this is my feeling, and I guess we will see in retrospect.
And so overall, there's been over 13,000 people killed in Putin's war, and roughly 7% of the country of Ukraine is under Russian occupation.
Yes, and it has been a tough but also hopeful period of Ukrainian history since the Revolution of Dignity, since Euromaidan protests. And today I'm very excited to talk about my project because it actually brought together all of those activists that were super active during the Revolution of Dignity and all of the civic leaders to accomplish something different. And I believe something that will further continue changing Ukraine for the better.
Yes, and we're going to be talking about baby Dima. Dima is an adorable little baby. He's just a couple months old, and he was born to a prominent Ukrainian civic leader who represents the future of the country. But unfortunately, Dima was born with a genetic issue. And this is how you and I connected over the story. You shared a GoFundMe link about Dima's story that broke my heart, and I shared it widely on Twitter, and other people I hardly ever hear from DM'd me to share how heartbroken they were of Dima's story, because the GoFundMe is trying to raise an astronomical amount of money to get the world's most expensive the most expensive treatment period from a major pharmaceutical company. And it's just this race against time because Dima must receive this treatment soon or else he could die. And I called you up, panicked over Dima's story, and you shared with me such uplifting information about this larger campaign that you and others at Razom launched to try to save Dima's life. Instead of just saying, oh, it's just one baby, they'll have another baby, you really focused on the fragility of life and why every life matters. And it's such a beautiful story. So could you share with us this campaign, this race against time that you've been organizing and leading, and why it matters?
Yes, I really think it's an incredible story because it's a story of a single baby whom we're trying to save that will essentially bring about the whole change of status quo of how these kids with this genetic condition are treated in Ukraine. But on top of that, there's another layer. This baby brought together all of those civic activists and leaders from the Revolution of Dignity because his father was a huge leader during that time, and he was a key person, the head of the self-defense units who prevented the Russian takeover of Odessa. Actually, it was May 2nd, 2014, so, we're around this time. And so it's quite incredible, and I think that bigger projects will come out of this. We are uniting all these civic leaders, and first thing what we want to accomplish, of course, is to help baby Dima, but also we found all the other kids who are suffering from this disease at various stages. This disease actually can happen in several types. Like baby Dima has the worst type. It's type 1. It's essentially you die by 2 years of age if you are not treated. But then there's second type, third type, fourth adult onset type. So there are all of these kids, but a lot of them are wheelchair bound. A lot of them die young and live a really harsh life. So we are hoping to help all of them, and we organized this advocacy campaign called Life for SMA Kids, where we are advocating for Ukrainian government to start a real SMA program that would fund the treatment, rehabilitation, and genetic screening and everything that's necessary to essentially detect this disease in newborns, treat it early, and have these kids live a normal life. So the thing with this disease is that it's progressive neurodegenerative disease, and essentially the earlier you treat it, these kids can really be like normal people. We connected with some families in the US and read some amazing stories online, because most of the states in the US do this genetic screening. You detect this in a newborn, you treat the baby before any symptoms are shown, and we talked to a family with a 3-year-old, and this boy is just running around doing normal things like any other child. So this is quite incredible, and it's really amazing that for this rare genetic disease there is this revolutionary treatment. It's just really sad that in Ukraine there are all of these kids who live and have no access to this treatment because, first of all, it's extremely expensive, and second of all, the government doesn't pay for any of that. So I really know that our movement, Save Lives of SMA Kids, will really change this. And then second of all, everything, saving baby Dima has a direct influence onto his own family. And his dad, being a great civic leader, his name is Vitaly Svichensky, who saved Odessa, and essentially during that time he said, and he called upon all other civic leaders to start going into government jobs, to take up those government jobs and to start changing Ukraine from within. So that's what he did after the revolution. He started working in the government and essentially, trying to make a difference. And like his core values is like zero tolerance of corruption. He's this new kind of leader that Ukraine really needs. And, if his son is saved and, he can focus again on going back into the government and doing what he does best, and he has shown amazing work in Odessa region. And I'm telling everybody who's listening now, mark my words, I really think this guy will be a president of Ukraine one day. And so if you're listening to this podcast, I really am urging you to donate to baby Dima, even if it's just the price of your morning coffee or lunch or a snack or anything. You can go on GoFundMe and just type in Save Dmitro, Dmytro, and you will find the campaign. We have raised over 55%, and you will be able in the future to say, oh, hey, I helped to save the son of Ukraine's president. So that will be pretty cool.
So I cover a lot of dark topics on this show, and one of the things that keeps me hopeful about the future is Ukraine's own history and what Ukrainians are doing to fight for their future and build a better future for themselves and their children, as you all are doing. And just to give our audience some background of what I mean is Ukraine could have been wiped out by Stalin's genocide famine in 1933, and it was a prison under Soviet oppression for many decades. And then it came out for independence, of course, as communism fell. And during that period, of course, it survived Chernobyl. And so there's all these horrific things that have happened throughout Ukraine's history that it keeps surviving and thrive. And it's getting better as a country. It's getting more open, knock on wood, as a society. Mm-hmm. And as we saw in the 2013-2014 Euromaidan Revolution of Dignity, that was an organic, spontaneous uprising where people took to the streets because they had enough and they no longer wanted to be stuck under Putin's puppet, Viktor Yanukovych. And it was people from all walks of life across Ukraine joining together on the square, millions of people filling the square. And even when photographs and videos of police violence and protesters being brutalized went viral, more and more people just came to the square to show their support and their solidarity, and they were ultimately successful. There's no intervention from any major global superpower. In fact, European officials tried to broker a peace deal that would have allowed Yanukovych to stay in power, and a Ukrainian activist jumped up on the stage and grabbed the microphone and said, no way, Yanukovych has until 10 a.m. to get out, or we're going to make him get out. And Yanukovych fled that night to Russia, where he's been hiding ever since. And what happened is, Russia quickly invaded. It seized Crimea right away, and it started to invade the east. And because the military was so hobbled from many years of corruption and Russian-driven corruption of the military, you had ministries of defense that had Russian passports. So what happened was volunteers, protesters, the people that drove the revolution had to then change course and become volunteer soldiers and medics on the front lines of being invaded by one of the most powerful militaries in the world. And that's what Dima's father did. And he led the movement to protect Odessa. And Odessa was originally in Putin's plans. Like Putin was like, I'm going to take back the parts of Ukraine that Catherine the Great conquered, and I'm going to give the Russian people Novorossiya, New Russia. And Dima's dad and other activists were like, no, you're not. and they stopped him, and it's just so incredible. And then as you said, they went into government. They ran for office themselves. They joined parliament, and they've been and so you're fighting all these wars that Americans are just now discovering themselves, like the disinformation warfare, the propaganda warfare, the asymmetrical warfare, how corruption is weaponized. And of course you have the much added difficulty of a real hot war on your borders and being used as a pawn by Russia against the West and the Russian people too. And throughout all that, Kiev remains a hotbed for the Russian resistance. There's a lot of Russian, Ukrainian, and Belarus solidarity too. So I'm very inspired by the work you guys are all doing on the ground, and I always love highlighting on the show because that's where my optimism comes from. And anytime I get discouraged by what's happening in the US, I'm always reminded by groups like yours and people like you that are just doing the damn thing and just springing out of bed and saying, how can I make the world a better place today? And just to highlight that, I want to tell everyone, you, with everything you're juggling, with everything you have going against you, and the big, David and Goliath story that you and your friends continue to live, you are taking on a fundraising effort to raise enough money for the most expensive treatment in the world. It costs what, like $2.3 million?
Right, 2.3 million. It's incredible.
You've managed to get half of that.
Even more, 55% essentially, in only 2 months. And most of the donations are from Ukraine. It's a truly kind of historic fundraiser, I would say, and only due to the fact that it unites all the activists, who have huge networks. All of the media is talking about this now. We have access to all of the different nonprofits and civic organizations. These are our friends. So we are able to publicize it really widely. So it's quite incredible. And our goal is to really finish fundraising in 1 month to get baby Dima treated around the age of 6 months old. And it will be really incredible.
Wow. Obviously, baby Dima's story, the hit is not just he's going to get the treatment through your efforts. Other people across Ukraine will also receive similar treatments.
Right. So we are working on multiple projects in parallel on how to help all the children. Some children are eligible for the gene therapy treatment, but some children are not anymore. But there are other treatments. They are also expensive. And they also have to be taken during the entire lifetime. But essentially, what we are doing here is because, thanks to this campaign for Little Dima, we have raised such a huge media presence for this disease, and we found all of these parents with their children. We said, listen, we just have to do more about this. There are all of these kids that are suffering. We just cannot, leave them behind. And since I found other children, every day I have been thinking about how to help them. So one thing, we started that advocacy campaign, Life for SMA Kids, and we, after 2 weeks of campaigning online, essentially, and the Ministry of Health of Ukraine is also, monitoring Facebook and all the online resources. We also have connections with them, but essentially they already changed their rhetoric and they are trying to make deals for one of the treatment options, which is huge. And we are really waiting, essentially in this month, we should hear the signing of this new treatment for all Ukrainian children with SMA, which will be incredible. And then, of course, we are campaigning to have a full-fledged SMA state program that will start in 2022. And we are also hearing, from our friends at the Ministry of Health that our campaigning essentially is changing the minds. And because it's on everybody's in the news so much, this disease, this is the right time to do it. And we're just so excited that we can help all of these kids. And, starting from here, we can do even more. Dima's dad, Vitaly, will get back to his government job. He will do even so much more.
Oh, fantastic. Where does he work in the government?
Well, he's still in the Odessa government, but I really think that after this he can just do anything, because after seeing how he runs this campaign, the first call of volunteers that I joined, and the caliber of people that you have involved in this campaign, I immediately said, and this was at the very beginning, we only had 10%, okay? So a lot of people were saying, but this is impossible, But once I joined that call, I said, that's it. This is done. This will be done for sure. I guarantee to you, these caliber of people, they will fundraise. We will do it. We will just do it for sure. And I think this is a huge experience, managing this huge campaign, 100 volunteers that are doing anything from, fundraising online to trying to do some events when there's no lockdown, to doing these special auctions for meetings famous Ukrainians. I mean, you name it, anything is done. And just collecting this huge sum of money and talking to doctors and to governments, he's getting an incredible experience in this section, and I think it will be huge what he will do after this.
So, given Ukraine's own history, why do you think civic society movements like yours continue to persist in the face of such great challenges?
I think when I was growing up in Ukraine, I actually didn't have such a strong feeling of the civic society. I got very much inspired when I moved to the US for college. I could see how volunteering is praised here, how people do so many projects on the side, even small kids, like in kindergarten and in school, and I thought it was really incredible. But I think it's really has been catching up really fast in Ukraine, especially with the generation that was born in independent Ukraine. Or like me, I was born at the very end of the Soviet Union. My birth certificate says I was born in the Soviet Union, but I have no idea what is the Soviet Union mentality, because I really grew up, my conscious time was during independent Ukraine. And so I think it's this really new generation that can see the possibilities. And I think, of course, Euromaidan and the Revolution of Dignity inspired all of us and showed us the power of the civic grassroots movement, the power of people that you can have and essentially how you can dictate where you want your country to go and how you see your country. And I think this is a huge inspiration, and that's why it continues. All of us, all of the civic leaders see that there still has to be a lot of work. And everybody understood at the end of the revolution that this is not the end. Actually, now starts a time where all of us either have to enter government or form nonprofits to keep the government accountable and essentially work in all kinds of different directions to change the country little by little, project by project. And this is what keeps us going, because there are a lot of successful projects, a lot of successful changes that happen, and there's still a lot to do, and we know that we can do it.
What advice do you have for civic leaders facing their own massive challenges, like corruption?
I think that you have to have your, stick to your values and don't give them up. I know that a lot of young people in Ukraine are facing this. And for example, I spoke to Dima's father, Vitaly, and he told me a lot about his government job. And he said initially when he entered government right after the revolution, it was really tough to be in government because the salaries were not so big. So then, of course, it's no wonder then you get these government officials who are taking money on the side, who are corrupt, because how can they really feed a family, But he had very strong convictions, and for a few years they endured somehow. And before that, he had his own tourism business that he gave up. But then there was a reform to raise the payment, the salaries for government officials. And once he entered, and he was like the deputy head of the Odessa local government, he already had a pretty decent salary. And he said that if anybody approached him, and he was approached a lot with offers to take, to take money on the side, and he just was very firm in his conviction that I am against corruption, I don't take it, and these are just his values. And I think all of the activists just have to stay strong, stick to your values, whatever it is, whatever happens. It can be really tough at times, but if you really stand for something, you have to stand for that, and just always believe that you are doing the right thing. It can be hard, but if you have a team and you have others who think like you can really persevere and make a change.
Thank you so very much for coming to Gaslit Nation, Olya. This was an incredible interview, and please keep us updated on all the work that you're doing for Ukraine. It's so important.
Thank you so much, Andrea. Thank you so much to everybody who listened. And I'm just asking you again if you can donate your coffee or your lunch money for baby Dima, and you can just search on GoFundMe Save Dmytro, Dmytro. I really strongly believe that the story of Dima will not just cure all of these other kids in Ukraine, but also will allow his dad to do some incredible things in the future, and including hopefully being a president one day.
Definitely one that won't get extorted by the President of the United States. Okay,
Our discussion continues, and you can get access to that by signing up on our Patreon at the Truth Teller level or higher.
We want to encourage you to donate to your local food bank, which is experiencing a spike in demand. We also encourage you to donate to giveindia.org to help Indians battling COVID-19.
We also encourage you to donate to the International Rescue Committee, a humanitarian relief organization helping refugees from Syria. Donate at rescue.org. And if you want to help critically endangered orangutans already under pressure from the palm oil industry, donate to the Orangutan Project at theorangutanproject.org. Gaslit Nation is produced by Sarah Kenzier and Andrea Chalupa. If you like what we do, leave us a review on iTunes. It helps us reach more listeners. And check out our Patreon. It keeps us going. And you can also subscribe to us on YouTube.
Our production managers are Nicholas Torres and Carlin Daigle. Our episodes are edited by Nicholas Torres, and our Patreon exclusive content is edited by Carlin Daigle.
Original music in Gaslit Nation is produced by David Whitehead, Martin Visseberg, Nick Farr, Damian Arriaga, and Carlin Daigle.
Our logo design was donated to us by Hamish Smith of the New York-based firm Order. Thank you so much, Hamish.
Gaslit Nation would like to thank our supporters at the producer level on Patreon and higher. Todd S. Perlstein,
Pat,
Kenny Main,
John Schoenthaler,
Frank Jaquette,
Kenneth Reed,
Ellen McGirt,
Jill Farron,
Larry Gasson,
Erica Moore,
Karen A. Deal,
Nico Phillips,
Brian E. Castor,
Lex Reed,
Andrea Scalzo,
Melessia Howland,
Karen Heisler,
Jordan Sanders,
Ann Bertino,
Rachel Winder,
T.R. Dunstan,
Kim,
John Millet or John Millett,
David East,
Shannon Nacy,
Ida,
Chris Fellow,
Dodie Pop,
Kristen Bredemus,
Gabrielle R.,
Ben Wheaton,
Joseph Mara Jr.,
Rich Holcomb,
Jeremy Thompson,
Thomas Scheibe,
Kelsey Malsom,
Julie Matthews,
Meganopolis,
Mark,
Matthew Womack,
Sean Berg,
Kristen Kuster,
Tracy Ash,
Benjamin Galuza,
Kai Gillis,
Sharon Hattrick,
Robinson,
Keith Gultshock,
William Barry Reeves,
Janet Robinson,
John Atrisk,
Richard Smith,
Emmy,
Kevin Gannon,
Sandra Colnins,
Katie Masuris,
John Laughlin,
Jeff Thompson,
James D. Leonard,
Evan Rosemore,
Chip Stolzenberg,
Leo Chalupa,
Carol Golstad,
Michael Wooldridge,
Kramer, no. Kramer, no criming.
Oh God, it's like a Dora the Explorer reference too. All right, excuse me. Jason Benke,
Marcus J. Trent,
Joe Darcy,
Ann Marshall,
Jeremy Lewis,
Tregve,
Christine M.,
D.L. Singfield,
Matt Perez,
Nicole Spear,
Kelly Ranson,
Brian Tejudin,
Christy Vitale,
Maureen Murphy,
Michelle Dash,
Jans Alstrup Rasmussen,
Zachary Lemon,
Dorothy Kamerick,
Victoria Olson,
Alabama,
ZW,
Lisa LaFlame,
Jason Bainbridge,
Catherine Anderson Carina,
Sarah Gray,
Lawrence Graham,
Mike Tripico,
Diana Gallagher,
John Ripley,
Ethan Mann,
Jennifer Slavic,
Rhonda White,
P.A. Isma,
David Porter,
Kate Cotton,
Kim Mellon,
Leah Campbell,
Lynn Schneider,
Jared Lombardo,
Karen Humphreys,
Giles Boquet,
Ann Marshall,
Irina Guardia,
Eric Kaplan,
Sonia Bogdanovich,
Pam Paris.
Tanya Chalupa.
Thank you all so much for your support of the show. We could not make Gaslit Nation without you.
Thank you.